I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the U.S. is threatening the UN Human Rights Council for its anti-Israel bias. Arab states are continuing to disown the Gulf nation of Qatar, which spells trouble for Hamas. And we'll reveal how an Israeli-created tree is going to change the environment. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. The United States is threatening to leave the UN Human Rights Council if it doesn't stop attacking Israel. That's all according to the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley. Right now, the council has a specific agenda item specifically aimed to attack Israel. Haley is saying she's not trying to end criticism of the Jewish state, but that it's simply not fair to have a specific mission to attack a country, especially when there are other nations committing human rights violations across the world. She's singling out North Korea, Iran, and Syria as the world's leading human rights violators, but the whole council is at fault.
Being a member of this council is a privilege, and no country who is a human rights violator should be allowed a seat at the table. Finally, it's hard to accept that this council has never considered a resolution on Venezuela, and yet it adopted 5 biased resolutions in March against a single country, Israel. It is essential that this council address its chronic anti-Israel bias if it is to have any credibility.
Israeli Deputy Minister for Diplomacy Michael Oren is happy with Haley's move, but he believes the council is too biased to be reformed. He says U.S. presence there only serves to legitimize an inherently anti-Semitic organization. But Israeli ambassador to the UN in Geneva, Raz Shechter, is tweeting that Israel, the U.S., and other states that care about human rights can make HRC fairer and more efficient. The U.S. has just said that in order to bring about a comprehensive peace deal, both Israelis and Palestinians will be forced to compromise. ILTV's Aaron Porce joins us in the studio with more. Aaron, what compromise are they talking about?
Well, after Trump's recent trip to Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and he met with both of the leaders, what he's starting to notice, if he didn't already know this before, was that the demands coming from both sides are not anywhere near in sync. And so, again, having gone back, I
believe... What an eye-opener.
I know, right? So the White House, I believe, at this point, Washington is seeing, we're still optimistic, we're still positive about forming a peace deal, but we're going to have to be more realistic in our expectations. I think that's what we're seeing right now.
All right, well, let's check out your report.
In a press conference held yesterday, State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert refused to address UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' statement lamenting 50 years of Israel's occupation in the West Bank. Instead, she took the time to reiterate the United States' support for reaching a comprehensive solution to the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Recently, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson was quoted as saying that President Trump has been very forceful with both Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas during his trip to the region last month. Yesterday, however, during a special event at the Knesset commemorating the 1967 Six-Day War, Netanyahu said that no settler will be uprooted in any final peace deal with the Palestinians. He went on to say that President Trump is sticking to traditional peacemaking formulas influenced by 50 years of propaganda, and that, quote, "I am doing what is necessary to protect the Jewish settlements in Judea and Samaria. We will continue to develop it, and we will not bring a tragedy upon the settlements if we agree to work together. This is the most important thing, to work together," end quote. For the most part, Israeli settlements in the West Bank are considered illegal under international law, and they're located in areas that the Palestinians would want for a future state.
Now, speaking about compromises, after Israel evacuated the Amona outpost in the West Bank in February, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he'd build a new settlement for some of the families. Now it looks like he's finally following through on that promise, and ILTV's Aaron Porce is still with us here to tell us more. So what is so surprising about this move?
Well, the big surprise is that it really goes against all of the promises that, the Prime Minister has made to the American government and to Donald Trump. President Trump. In addition to that, it really goes against what the international community tends to consider as a consensus, with that the West Bank settlement is illegal and is an occupation. So, you know, Netanyahu, we're seeing Bibi in this kind of stuck in this rock and a hard place kind of situation between pleasing his supporters and pleasing his allies.
All right, let's check out the report.
Along with 1,500 other housing units in the West Bank, the first steps to building a new settlement have been approved by the Defense Ministry, and this will be the first new government-authorized settlement in 25 years. When the new town of Amichai is built, around 40 families who were expelled from Amona will have a new home. But the Amona evacuees are skeptical. Their spokesman says that this is just another step in a long and bureaucratic road. It will not provide a short-term solution for the children in the coming school year. An Israeli official says that the building plans have already been discussed with the Trump administration, and the government doesn't expect any diplomatic trouble to arise from the new construction.
Joining me today in the studio is Yifas Segel, the director of the International Legal Forum, who's been working to counter the BDS movement and highlight Amnesty International's anti-Israel bias. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Amnesty International. More specifically, why is Amnesty International calling for a selective boycott of West Bank settlements?
Well, I think we should start with the question, why is a human rights organization promoting the infringement of certain groups of, human rights of other groups at the expense, let's say, of a group that they're supporting? I mean, there's an inherent problem in that, in that rhetoric, in that rationale. I mean, to call upon a group of hundreds of thousands of people to lose their employment, their rights to education, their legitimacy, even their livelihood, that is a very big human rights issue. And obviously, if you understand that, you understand that the motive behind the BDS movement and anyone who supports it is definitely not human rights.
Now, how would such a boycott actually end up affecting these areas of Israel, or the areas of Israel that are not located in the occupied territories?
Well, let me tell you this. I mean, people think that there's a border or there's a distinction that can be made. Honestly, there isn't. I mean, if you're talking about a bakery in a corner of some street, like a small family business, then maybe yes. But basically, if you think about it, all the pillars of the Israeli economy are all located or giving services to residents without any discrimination, obviously, between an imaginary green line that doesn't exist on the ground. So if you look at the banks, at the gas companies, at the cellular companies, they all provide services both for the IDF and for the residents of, beyond the green line. So if you call to boycott any business that has anything to do with either the people that geographically beyond the green line, then you would basically call to boycott everyone and everything that has to do with Israel. So we're coming back to the conclusion that this is what the BDS movement is for: the destruction of the state of Israel, the annihilation of the state of Israel, again, not about human rights.
Now, is the usage of Israeli military law to govern Palestinians in Area C of the West Bank a human rights violation in any way?
I actually think that it would probably benefit everyone if the Israeli law would apply, because Israeli law basically is promoting equality and freedoms of religion and all kinds of other rights that unfortunately do not exist in the Palestinian Authority. But let's remember, Palestinians that reside in Area C are under PA's control. Israel's military rule is only to let's say Israelis or the Jewish inhabitants and the territory. So basically, the Palestinians, unfortunately for many of them, are still under the control of the Palestinian Authority and not Israel. And I will add one thing. One of the things that we want to promote is exactly that equality. And when the international community opposes it, this is the damage that they're really inflicting. If we want to apply Israeli law and equality to everyone under the Israeli law, with all the rights, the democratic rights that the Israeli law bestows upon the citizens of Israel, I think that would benefit everybody. So when I would like to invite everybody to rethink what they're doing, what they're promoting. By insisting that Israeli law does not apply, basically what they're doing is condemning people not to receive an equal treatment, according to law.
Now let's talk about another one of Amnesty International's claims. Israel is exploiting Palestinian natural resources in the West Bank. That is something that Amnesty International has said many times. Is there truth to this?
I have to tell you, this is something that if you review the Israeli law and practice, but let's start with the law, that there is the Israeli law does not permit to exploit natural resources. There's nothing there that is being done other than preserving to destroy natural resources or to exploit populations. And you know, when people talk about colonialism, I mean, when empires used to expand, they used to do this for profit. When you look at, you know, Israeli presence in the West Bank, where's the profit? If anyone can show me a profit, then maybe their argument could have had merits. But obviously, I mean, Israel spends a lot of money on defense and protection, and there's a lot of problems in that area. There is no profit.
All right. Now, does Israel allocate the same amount of natural resources from the West Bank to settlers as it does to Palestinians? Well,
natural resources, I mean,
like water as an example.
Yeah, water coming from the aquifer and all these, basically everything comes together and then being divided again through the water authority with Israel and the PA. I mean, it doesn't matter geographically where you are located. If anything, there is a problem with, you know, stealing, you know, outlawed activities of different groups, a lot of them Palestinians coming from the PA, and not by the government. So basically all these resources, there aren't that many resources. I mean, in that it's a small area, there's no oil or, you know, but everything is being divided basically equally by the authorities, so it doesn't matter where you live.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us to talk to us about Amnesty International and the organization's views towards Israel. And hopefully we'll have you back again soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, today thousands attended the funeral of an Israeli Arab who was shot dead while storming a police station. Mohammed Taha was shot dead by a security guard in a Kfar Qasim riot yesterday, and some are claiming his murder was influenced by racial bias. The police say the guard acted according to regulations and that along with another guard and a police officer, his life was in immediate danger. But according to Joint Arab List Knesset member Ahmed Tibi, there's only one collective in Israel that's in danger of being shot and killed over demonstrations. His Joint List colleague Jamal Zahalka says that Israel's public security minister and police commissioner are abandoning Arab citizens to gangs of criminal organizations. While Israel has successfully taken on organized crime in Jewish cities, Zahalka says they're neglecting the Arab community. An alleged 50% of violent crime in Israel is in Arab cities, but only 5% of the police budget goes to fighting crime in those locations. The diplomatic crisis between the Sunni Arab world and Qatar is continuing to escalate, especially now that Jordan has announced it will be downgrading diplomatic ties with the Gulf state. ILTV's Max Keisler is here with more on the story. Max, why is this happening now?
You know, we can't overlook the role of President Trump in this. He just went to the Middle East. He spoke to the King of Saudi Arabia and really the whole Arab Muslim world and told them crack down on extremism. And this is a great opportunity for them to just show, even if they themselves have connections to extremist groups, that they're against it, they're with Trump.
Now, what kind of impact will that have on Israel?
Well, overall, this is very good for Israel because Hamas has benefited a lot from Qatar. They've received a lot of money from Qatar over the years, and they've used it as a home base. And we're already seeing Qatar has expelled a lot of senior Hamas terrorists from their country already. And another big angle here, Iran. You know, Qatar has been very close with Iran, and that's what's going on here. The Saudis are talking about Qatar backs Hamas, Qatar backs the Muslim Brotherhood. It's really Iran.
All right, well, let's check out your report.
A day after Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, and Bahrain cut ties with Qatar, Jordan is following their lead, and it's also promising to close the local Al Jazeera office. The popular satellite news station is owned by the government of Qatar, and many see it as essentially Qatari state propaganda. The foreign minister of Saudi Arabia is saying that Qatar must stop supporting extremist groups in the region, like Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. Adil Al-Jubair says Qatar's financial and diplomatic support for these hardline Islamist organizations is undermining Egypt and the Palestinian Authority. Israel hasn't commented on the recent turmoil, but it must be a big deal for Prime Minister Netanyahu and his security and diplomatic officials. Qatar is close to Iran, Israel's main enemy in the region, and its financial support for Hamas is a thorn in Israel's side. While Qatar does occasionally act as a channel between Israel and Hamas, it appears that Israel would prefer to use Egypt as a go-between. Pressure from Arab states for Qatar to distance themselves from Hamas and Iran could advance Israel's interests in the region.
Anyone who's tried to buy a house or apartment in Tel Aviv knows how expensive the Israeli real estate market is, and that's because more and more wealthy people are investing in housing. But now it looks like locals aren't the only ones in trouble. The Israeli stock market is also struggling. Eli Groner, the Director General of the Prime Minister's office, says that the Israeli public is afraid of the stock exchange. At a conference of the Israeli Association of Publicly Traded Companies, Groner said that both Israeli and international investors are shying away from investing in the stock market, with Israeli investors focusing on the real estate sector. Despite the complicated processes and large entry costs for real estate, it's still more attractive than the undeveloped stock market. Groner says that the high commission rates and the high-risk premiums are driving potential investors away, even though the price-earning ratios in Israel are comparable to those of Wall Street in the boom years of the 60s and 70s. He says that investors aren't even aware of this, and it's a missed opportunity. Groner is hoping with some deregulation in the capital market, people could look at the Israeli stock market like Wall Street in its golden years. Israeli Gal Gadot's performance in Wonder Woman is warming the hearts of audiences worldwide, but it sounds like Jordan won't be joining in on the fun, and it's all because the actress proudly served in the Israeli Defense Forces. ILTV's Aaron Porras has more on the scoop, obviously, because we know how much you love Gal Gadot.
We have a, we have an understanding.
A special connection.
Yeah, it's more one-sided. Like, really, I just have the understanding.
Yeah, I think we're all aware of that here in the office. But let's talk a little bit about, what's going on. This film racked in a crazy amount.
$103.1 million.
Right, into American box offices. But now we're seeing another nation try to boycott this.
Yeah,
and why
Jordan.
Is that the case?
So Jordan, which is interesting, too, because Jordan and Israel signed a peace treaty in 1994,
right.
And yet many Jordanians on the street still have this anti-Zionist regime mentality. And so, anything Israel, they kind of just reject.
So I guess we're going to have to wait and see if this actually happens, but let's check out your report first.
One Jordanian group against normalization with Israel said that they, quote, remind the Jordanians of their obligation to boycott the film, and we refuse to be partners to the crimes of the Zionists and to increase their profits from this film. The Arab audience will not be involved in projects that represent Zionism and the Israeli army, end quote. Lebanon, which is still technically at war with Israel, banned the film outright a few days ago in protest of Gal Gadot's Israeli heritage, having little concern with whether or not she was a soldier at all. Gadot has indeed been proud of her Israeli and military background, however. She's publicly supported the IDF on social media and in interviews. As for the film's reception elsewhere, the box office take was estimated at $103.1 million over the opening weekend and $223 million worldwide.
For those of you who didn't know, Monday, June 12th is International Russia Day, a day that commemorates the adoption of Russia's constitutional reform in 1990. Well, to celebrate this year, Israel is hosting a very special event. Live from Jerusalem's Teddy Hall, the internationally renowned Sveshnikov State Academic Russian Choir will be performing for their first time ever in Israel. Jerusalem Post correspondent Maxim Reder joins me today to the studio to tell us more. Thank you so much for coming in.
Hello.
Now, this is something that I also just learned about. Tell us about Russia Day. How is it typically celebrated?
It's an international event which will take place for the third time now. It takes place in several countries at the same day. This year, this will be Israel, Switzerland, and Germany. In the past, it was Italy and France and so on, England.
Wait, so there are events that take place in a specific amount of countries every year?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
This year, it's as I said, Israel, Switzerland, and Germany.
Interesting. And so let's move to the state choir that is going to be coming here. What can we expect from them other than obviously some beautiful singing?
First of all, top quality. Second, the program is very interesting and it has also an educational value because it's kind of a time travel. One could have expected that for this visit that they just made some arrangement of Jewish folk songs, but this is not the case. It's a true study of interaction between two cultures, actually three cultures, Hebrew culture, Yiddish culture, and Russian culture. So among the pieces they will be performing are psalms composed in different epochs, like in 18th, 19th, 20th century. Also pieces based on Yiddish pieces, even of the 20th century.
No, it's very interesting because Israel,
it's a time travel.
Absolutely, it's time traveling, and also, I mean, Israel has so many immigrants from Russia. I mean, we all know this. My name is Natasha, and because of that, everybody here always asks me if I'm Russian because there are so many Russian immigrants.
It's an obvious assumption.
It's an obvious here in Israel. It's an obvious assumption. But Aaron, had you heard about Russia, International Russia Day?
I have not actually. No, it was very surprising to hear about National Russia Day. But I really kind of want to know. You know, you're saying it's this beautiful fusion of all these different cultures, and I know that this is the choir. Is it an a cappella choir? They don't have any musical accompaniment. Okay.
A piano, I figure, maybe, but no, it's actually a cappella. I just want to say that it's not about a huge Russian immigrants community here. It's just for general public. It's of great interest for the general public, and these Jewish and Hebrew programs are not the only pieces which will be performed. It's also Russian classics. And the soloist, now you see on the screen, I think this is their major soloist. He's a baritone singer of Mariinsky Theatre of St. Petersburg, who appeared in the past, or maybe even now, in La Scala in Milano and Metropolitan. So it's top quality.
Well, I mean, this is something that I definitely would want to check out myself. And where is this concert going to take place?
It's conventions, what is called in Hebrew Binyanei Oma in Jerusalem.
Right,
and
the conventions.
Teddy Hall. Yeah.
Interesting.
Just come and listen. It's top culture. This is what I want to say.
Come listen. All right, we'll be there. We'll be there. Thank you so much for coming in, Maxime. All right, Israel's Ben Gurion Airport was a sight to see last night as more than 200 families and their supporters gathered to welcome 72 new Ethiopian immigrants to Israel. It's been almost a year since the last Ethiopian immigrants came to the nation, and some are hoping that this is the beginning of a new wave of immigration from the East African nation. There are around 9,000 self-identified Jews in Ethiopia who have been unable to qualify for the Jewish rite of return known as Aliyah according to Israeli standards. Legal hurdles and budget shortfalls have prevented their immigration to the Jewish state. The remaining Ethiopians are Falashmua, whose ancestors converted to Christianity in the 19th and 20th centuries. Most of them are eager to undergo conversions to Judaism in Israel, and the Jewish Agency has pushed for their immigration. But the Ministry of the Interior has been reluctant to accept them in large numbers, as many of them do not have a Jewish grandparent. The International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem is paying for the flights for new immigrants, and Jewish activist groups across Israel are pushing for their acceptance. Many are hopeful that yesterday's Aliyah flight represents a turning point in the Falashmura struggle. For Ethiopian families divided by immigration laws, it's a chance for family reunification. The 72 new immigrants will have to make some adjustments in Israel aside from their conversions. They'll have to acquire Hebrew fluency and find employment too. There's nothing better than a shady tree on a hot, sunny day, but what if the tree had a water fountain, phone charging ports, and even free Wi-Fi? The Israeli firm Sologic has developed a solar energy tree in time for World Environment Day, and it's been planted in Nevers, France. Locals are now able to bask in the shade of its solar panels, charge their phones in its sun-powered USB ports, and treat their dogs to a refreshing drink from its water trough. Sologic says the e-tree is an ecological structure that produces green energy and provides a place of comfort and energy. At night, the tree's solar panels, which resemble square leaves, light up, making it a welcoming place to rest on a late-night stroll. Those familiar with Shel Silverstein's classic children's book are calling the e-tree the solar giving tree, so let's hope that no one chops this one down.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say if you plant a tree, you're planting hope, so today's word is etz, which means tree in Hebrew. I don't know about you, but I totally get why somebody would want to be an etz hugger. We as a society need to learn to appreciate our etzim, or trees, and also to be just like them. After all, a tree stays grounded, it's connected to its roots. Every year it turns over a new leaf, plus it bends before it breaks and always keeps growing. Pretty impressive, right? And let's not forget, trees help us breathe by producing the oxygen that gives us life. In fact, a medium-sized ant generates the same amount of oxygen as each one of us needs to breathe. So I think it's fair to say that we all need to start treating our etsem better. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be clear to partly cloudy with a low of 68 or 20 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect sunny skies with an additional rise in temperatures to a high of 86 or 30 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.54 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.